Welcome in to CBS News 24/7 on this Friday. I'm Mugo Odigwe. We're keeping an eye on Wall Street this Friday. U.S. stocks close into positive territory, ending a historic and wild week. Plus, a judge could decide whether to release Columbia University graduate Mahmoud Khalil. The key hearing happening right now. And the NTSB gives an update on the helicopter crash that left an executive and his family dead in New York. You're watching CBS News 24/7. And we're watching Wall Street wrap up one of the wildest weeks in history. We know the closing bell rang just moments ago. The Dow, well, it's up right now, up more than 600 points. And let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map brought to you by FinViz here, showing the top 500 stocks today. You can kind of see a few reds here, but mostly green on the screen. Today's stocks jumped on the hope that President Trump could soon reach a deal with China as its trade war with the U.S. escalates. But here's where we stand. China hit back against Trump's 145% tariff on China, boosting tariffs on U.S. imports from 84% to a whopping 125%. Then White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the president is optimistic about reaching a deal with China. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady, she joins us live right now from the New York Stock Exchange. Kelly, I know you've been on every CBS News 24/7 hit so far today, so we appreciate you joining us at this hour. Can you walk us through what happened in the markets today?
Yeah, I feel like everyone's getting ready to go home here, Mugo, but I'm still here with you, so I got you. Yeah, look, this was the close to one of the wildest weeks on Wall Street in history. We did see all the major indexes close up. Part of that had to do with some really good economic data that we got, but also there was some positive messaging from the White House that there are deals on the table. They are emphasizing, of course, the president is going to be meeting, with leaders, talking with leaders, and at least seems positive that China wants to do a deal, even if they don't know it. So certainly also on a Friday, you often see sentiment take over. Last Friday, it was extremely negative. We had one of the worst days in history for the Dow, but that sentiment buoyed things to a positive. I mean, we will see where the next week goes, because I will note that even in times of crises like the financial crisis, COVID, we have these up days, and then we can also move the other way. So the roller coaster is not over yet, Mugo.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is not. So, Kelly, earnings season starts today. What are we hearing from big bank CEOs, and how is all of this weighing on investors so far?
It's one of my favorite times of the quarter earnings season. So it started off with the big banks, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo. I know, I'm a nerd. And basically all of them said the last quarter, Q1 of 2025 was good. They beat expectations. But we did hear a lot of the word uncertainty. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon mentioned that there's tumultuous times ahead, or turbulent times ahead. We also heard from Wells Fargo that they want a timely resolution to this trade tension. And so what we were hearing is that consumers are still spending. From JP Morgan Chase, of course, they've got all that credit card data. But there's the fear that if these tariffs do cause inflation or sentiment to decline, which we have seen quite rapidly over the past couple of weeks, that's going to lead to a slowdown in consumer spending. But overall, still a good picture, but turbulent times ahead, it seems, according to some of these big banks.
And just on a quick note here, Kelly, we love nerds here on 24/7. So please do you never change. While we have you here, we know there is new data on how Americans feel about the U.S. economy. What have we learned there?
Yeah, so that was that consumer sentiment that I was alluding to. So we got a mid-month read, and it was really, really bad. So we actually dropped 11% versus last month, and I'll give you some context. A reading of over 100 means it's positive. We hit 50.8 today, so that was very negative. Of course, the usual suspects right now: tariffs, inflation, all of that uncertainty. I will note, though, the data that was covered in this survey was up until April 8th. The president announced that 90-day pause for some of those tariffs April 9th. So when we get the full month picture, I do wonder if we will see a little bit of a buoy in some of that consumer sentiment.
All right, we shall see. Kelly O'Grady, long day for you, so thank you once again for joining us here on 24/7. Breaking news, an immigration judge in Louisiana just allowed the Trump administration to move forward with its efforts to deport Mahmoud Khalil. He is the Columbia University graduate. CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez joins us right now with this breaking news. Camilo, you were in that courthouse when all of this went down. What can you tell us about what happened?
Hi, Mugo. A Justice Department immigration judge here in Louisiana just ruled that Mahmoud Khalil can continue to face deportation in federal immigration court by the Trump administration, which is alleging that his presence here and his activities in the U.S. pose adverse foreign policy consequences for the U.S. The judge sustained that ground of deportation and has given Khalil's lawyers until April 23rd to file any applications for relief from deportation on that legal ground. And if not, he could very well be ordered deported to Syria or Algeria, she said. She did, however, hold in abeyance that second deportation ground that was cited by the Trump administration. That was a claim by the Department of Homeland Security that Mr. Khalil engaged in immigration fraud by failing to disclose certain information in his green card application. Mahmoud Khalil is, of course, a lawful permanent resident and a green card holder, and of course was a vocal voice in those protests in Colombia last year over the war in Gaza. Mahmoud Khalil also, importantly, Mugo, shared some remarks in front of the courtroom just when it was concluding the hearing. He said that earlier in the week, that very same judge talked about due process and fundamental fairness, and he said neither of those two things were followed today.
Wow. Yeah, I will say I was kind of surprised about the outcome, but you kind of mentioned this earlier, and I want to circle back to it. Do we know what comes next in this case? You said his legal team has up until a point in April. Can you repeat that for us, please?
Sure. So the immigration judge here outside of this detention facility has given Khalil's lawyers until April 23rd to file any application for relief from deportation to Syria or Algeria. That could come in the form of asylum or a waiver on these deportation grounds. And so they have a couple of days now, about a week, to file that application if one indeed exists. And she paused the case over the second deportation ground, which was again an allegation by the DHS that Mr. Khalil engaged in immigration fraud.
And Camilo, I know you were in that courtroom, so do you know what Mahmoud Khalil's mood was when that judgment was reached? Did he say anything else, do anything else? Any bodily reaction that you happened to see in the courthouse when that judgment was read?
I mean, Mugo, he stood silently during this entire hearing. It lasted for more than an hour. At some instances, he was smirking or smiling at some of the comments that the DHS lawyer was making to argue that Mr. Khalil should be deported. And at the end, in addition to making the comment about this proceeding lacking due process and, quote, fundamental fairness, unquote, he also urged the judge to exercise, quote, the same urgency in this case in other cases of migrants detained in this facility behind me.
Okay, Camilo Montoya Galvez, thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate it. The Supreme Court has ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the return of a mistakenly deported Maryland father. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was deported to an El Salvador prison due to an administrative error. And following that order, a district court judge gave the Trump administration a tight deadline to provide details and plans to get him back. CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen joins us now. Jake, what were the takeaways from the hearing today?
Well, the Department of Justice still, like the White House and like every other part of the government, has not provided any information on answering this judge's questions or even speaking out loud that there are efforts actively underway to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia back to the United States. As a result of that, this Maryland judge ordered a daily status report that the government is going to have to file, not just by a Department of Justice attorney, but by somebody who has personal firsthand knowledge of what should be happening, which is to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia Garcia back to the United States to update them on what is going on in the government's efforts. It's a little more complicated than that, though, because the government objects to this and has said that they feel like they might be invoking potential state privilege over some of this information, right? The conversations between the Salvadoran president and President Trump could be one of those things. But the attorney for the Department of Justice today had no answers to any of the judge's questions. And in fact, he wouldn't actually even put on the record that Mr. Abrego Garcia is at that CICOT prison in El Salvador. He said that the plaintiff's assertions that he is there is accurate so far as he knew, but that the government had provided him specifically no information on what is underway in terms of these conversations. It's the second time with two attorneys now that the Department of Justice has basically stonewalled its own attorneys so that when a judge has questions like this, A, where is he? What is his current status? B, what efforts are underway? And C, what is the government doing to not just bring him back, but to make sure that he's back safely and timely, as this judge first ordered about a week ago?
And so we know Abrego Garcia was deported to El Salvador under the Alien Enemies Act. A federal judge in New York is making an effort to block those deportations in his district. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's right. We know from earlier this week that at least in the case of two people, they first had their deportations blocked. This is part of an effort by the ACLU and other legal groups around the country stemming from Monday's Supreme Court decision, which said that if you were going to try to block your deportation under the Alien Enemies Act, so you're older than being a teenager and you're Venezuelan in the United States, you are potentially eligible for deportation under the statute if you're here illegally. This system that really the ACLU has to kind of do is find people who are being detained or already detained across the country and sue in these specific jurisdictions. So there's an ongoing case in Texas in which a judge has blocked everybody in a detention center, one specific ICE detention center, from being deported under that. This judge in New York said that anyone in state, local, or federal custody in the Southern District of New York, which is mostly Manhattan, cannot be deported under the Alien Enemies Act. However, if you are an illegal migrant who's here not in any of those two places, you are still eligible to be deported under that, as the ACLU continues to try to find these cases across the country to seek one judge, all it would take, to put a nationwide block on these deportations, like we saw in the last case, except that was struck down by the Supreme Court.
Right. Okay. Jake Rosen, thank you so much for your reporting. The world is watching the White House as the trade war intensifies between the U.S. and China. Questions swirl over Trump's endgame strategy. China says it's not afraid of a trade war with the U.S., but it also says if the U.S. continues to ramp up tariffs on Chinese goods, it will no longer respond. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes, she is joining us now. Nancy, is there any indication that the U.S. and China plan to hold talks at some point and hopefully work all of this out?
No indication right now, Mugo. And when the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked today whether President Trump would just pick up the phone and call his Chinese counterpart, President Xi, to try to get the ball rolling, she said that she was going to leave that to national security officials to work out. But it doesn't appear that anything is on the books right now. Instead, what we have is this standoff where the president raised tariffs on China. They responded. That same cycle played out several times to the point where we are now, where the U.S. has imposed tariffs, unprecedented tariffs, really, of 145% on Chinese goods coming to this country, and the Chinese have responded with 125% tariffs of their own. And the reason that they're saying they're not going to respond again if Trump raises the tariffs even higher is because at this point, it's basically moot. As one U.S. business owner told me yesterday, at this point, the tariffs could be 1,000%. I cannot afford to get Chinese goods out of the port if I have to pay even more in tariffs than I do for the goods themselves. So that's where we are right now.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Nancy, I want to ask you a question about President Trump himself, because he is having his annual physical today, and apparently it's still ongoing. What do we expect to see or even hear from him after?
Right, we were told that the full physical would last about 5 hours, and we're at about hour 3.5 right now. So he's still at Walter Reed. Haven't heard from him, which is not unusual. We may get a couple of details once the physical wraps up today. The White House press secretary did commit, in response to a question from our Jennifer Jacobs today, to release all the relevant information, a full report related to this physical, which was notable because President Trump promised to do so after his last physical when he was on the campaign trail. He said that to our very own Caitlin Huey-Burns, but he never did release it.
So we'll wait and see if it is in fact released this time around. Nancy Cordes, thank you for joining us today. And we're following two major stories. Investigators in New York, they are giving an update on the helicopter crash in the Hudson River. And in Florida, a small plane crash leaves multiple people dead. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Our maps take us to New York City, where investigators work to figure out what went wrong after a helicopter crashed into the Hudson River. All 6 people on board died. Here's what we know so far. A local sightseeing company operated the helicopter. Among those on board, the pilots and a family of 5 visiting from Spain, including a father, mother, and their 3 children. The NTSB gave an update on its investigation. Take a listen here.
The wreckage exam began this morning. Our team, I was there, our team began pulling components and the engine off the wreckage and other components that they would like to more closely examine. Most of their focus was to turn it upright and move the helicopter or the wreckage inside so that they can begin to do a more comprehensive examination and get to the other side of the wreckage that was against the pavement. We also are aware that there are dive teams. The New York Police Department is still diving for components and pieces of the helicopter that we are still looking to recover. Those include the main rotor, the main transmission, the roof structure, and the tail structure, and we appreciate all of their hard work.
Of course, the big question on everyone's mind right now, what went wrong? Video posted on social media shows the chopper apparently broke apart while still in midair. You see that there with its rotors and tail crashing into the Hudson River. The NTSB says it could take months to determine what caused the crash. And in Florida, a small plane crashed, killing 3 people on board. The plane went down in Boca Raton this morning near a major interstate highway and pushed a car onto railroad tracks. Video from the scene shows the plane and the car on fire there. 1 person on the ground was hurt, but luckily with non-life-threatening injuries. CBS News Miami has been covering the story all day and spoke to someone who witnessed the crash.
I saw the plane basically go over top of one of the other corporate buildings. I knew it was noticeably very low flying. And after that, I had gotten up out of my seat, looked out the window. I saw the plane go further, I guess, north and almost make a U-turn. And sure enough, I was looking out, in the same direction that I saw the plane before that. And he just came back by and I saw the plane drop below the tree line.
So you actually saw it drop below?
Yes.
Did you hear a crash? Or?
I heard the initial hit and then shake of the windows, as well as the mushroom cloud with smoke and a fireball. So
what were you thinking as all this was going on?
In disbelief. Yeah. I mean, it's not something that you really think that you're going to see in your lifetime. So it's very unfortunate.
The FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board are investigating the cause of the crash. Staying in Florida, a convicted killer who was mistakenly released from a jail in Georgia has been captured. After 2 weeks on the run, Catherine Guzman was found and apprehended near Orlando. Guzman, a trained MMA fighter, admitted to strangling his girlfriend to death back in 2022. In New Mexico, Santa Fe police releasing new video of a wild chase of a U-Haul truck. Authorities say the driver of that truck had 2 hostages locked in the back. Video shows the suspect identified as 50-year-old Stacy Walker outside the truck with his hands up. It all started when they got a call. Police say this all started when they got a call from a witness after they heard someone in the back of the U-Haul scream for help. Officers found a man and a woman in the back of the truck. Walker is now charged with kidnapping, fleeing, and assault on police. And now to Georgia, where a suspect is in custody after targeted shootings at a Walmart and a home. Police say a Walmart employee shot and killed a co-worker inside that store in Covington, that's southeast of Atlanta. Another person was also shot outside the store. Police say the suspect then went to a home 2 miles away and killed another person. The suspect was later arrested in South Carolina. In just hours, South Carolina is set to execute an inmate by firing squad. Michael Mahdi was sentenced to die for the ambush killing of an off-duty police officer. Mahdi chose to die by 3 bullets to the heart instead of lethal injection or electric chair. This will be the second time the state had to carry out that method in the past 5 weeks. Let's jump the map now to Maryland, where video to our monitors shows the moment ICE agents smashed a car window and took a 51-year-old mother into custody. CBS News Baltimore's Tara Lynch spoke to the woman's daughter.
No! Oh, mommy! You wouldn't think that you and your mom are going to work and suddenly they're taking your mom for no reason.
On March 31st in Westminster, Karen Cruz Barrios says she and her mother, Elsie Barrios, were driving to work when law enforcement pulled up behind them. ICE agents approached the car, asked for IDs, and told Barrios to step out. That's when she asked for a search warrant. Elsie Barrios is currently seeking affirmative asylum after her attorney says she entered the United States in 2017 undocumented. Cruz Barrios says the agents did not give a warrant to her mother, so she refused to get out. That's when they broke the window and unlocked the car.
No! I would understand if they had a search warrant or anything for her, then okay, then, you guys can, take her out or give it to her and she can step out. There was no need for them to do all that.
Barrios stepped out and was arrested, processed, and detained. An ICE spokesperson tells WJZ that Barrios is an illegal alien, Salvadoran national, and known affiliate of MS-13. Her attorney says she's received no evidence of this.
We have not received either any arrest warrant for her or any record of deportability for her.
Cruz Barrios says ICE agents have gone to their house twice this year. Barrios requested a warrant and when nothing was produced, refused to leave her home. The agents then left. Her daughter says she just wants her mother to come home.
I just hope that my mom, gets out and that it's better for her and for other people too. I hope that they don't keep violating people's rights,
Barrios is scheduled for a hearing on Monday in immigration court in New Jersey. She's currently being held at a prison in Pennsylvania. Back to you.
All right, turning now to weather. A live look at Philadelphia, where the east is dealing with chilly temperatures. Meanwhile, across the country, parts of the west, they're seeing warm weather. Well, Zoe,
warm weather.
More than just warm weather?
Record
You just say it. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Triple-digit heat in Phoenix. Tucson, Arizona also expecting triple digits. And don't forget what month it is. It's still April. It's still spring. So these are, yes, record-breaking high temperatures for this time of the year. Not normal to see this kind of heat building across the desert Southwest. So yes, expect record-breaking heat with triple digits again from Phoenix down to Tucson, but still well above average even to Salt Lake City and across the northernmost parts of the United States. But you might notice on the other side of the United States, on the East Coast, there's a lot cooler temperatures as a storm system is actually going to be bringing some snow up across New England by the time that we step out overnight tonight. This storm system brought a little bit of severe weather across the Gulf Coast states last night, and today we're looking at most of the activity making its way across the Carolinas. It's going to continue to bring the chance for maybe an isolated thunderstorm or two, but really nothing too impressive. That's really great news, though, for those river levels that have been extremely high. There has been widespread flooding, but with the dry air and quiet conditions that are likely going to stick around across the central United States, again, those river levels will continue to subside, and that is really, really great news. I do want to break down the details on the timing, though, of that upcoming storm system and when you might actually see a few snow flurries. Again, the severe weather potential really isn't going to be until this afternoon from the panhandle of Florida all the way through the Carolinas. It will quickly move offshore by tonight, where places like Washington, D.C., up to New York City, maybe even Boston, dealing with a little bit of rain. So it's going to be a rainy Friday night for you and a wet and cold early Saturday morning commute. So there might be some slick spots on the roadways up across New England, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, maybe seeing up to 3 inches of snow overnight tonight. So definitely not feeling like spring across the East Coast because it feels like winter, but feeling more like summer across the West Coast.
What's happening? Just opposite things.
Yeah, I was about to say, tale of two different weather stories. It's spring, though. It's kind of what we expect.
You're right. You're right. All right, Zoe, thank you. Popular devices you use every day could now cost you more here in the United States. How President Trump's tariffs could affect iPhone prices. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. We are watching Wall Street wrap up one of its wildest weeks in history. The closing bell rang just 30 minutes ago, and the Dow jumped on the hope that President Trump could soon reach a trade deal with China after China hit the U.S. with a 125% retaliatory tariff. One item that is likely to get more expensive under Trump's tariffs on China might be on your hand right now as we speak. We're talking about an iPhone. Apple has a manufacturing hub in China. Now, Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods test the company's supply chain. So let's bring in tech journalist Yasmin Quorum. Yasmin, what do we know about this? We think these tariffs will make iPhones much more expensive by any chance?
Yes, they will. I'm sure you've spent a couple grand on iPhones in the past. I have too. And if we thought iPhones were pricey, they are about to get a lot more. Now, we were in some trouble last week as Trump slapped tariffs on many countries. A lot of the countries were where Apple manufactures iPhones. Since then, President Trump has paused a lot of those tariffs on those countries except for China. Now, if we take a look at manufacturing in China, when it comes to Apple, more than 80% of iPhones are manufactured in China. They're more efficient there. They're usually less pricey there. Now they will be slapped with a 145% tax when imported to the U.S. As we've seen, neither country is blinking. My guess is, as this escalates, we will begin to see pricier iPhones.
So I didn't know more than 80% of iPhones manufactured in China. That is a lot. The question then is, can they just make their iPhones here in the U.S.? Is that possible?
That's a good question. They can, but it's not going to be cost efficient. And the prices I've seen are shocking. Wedbush analyst Dan Ives estimates that making an iPhone in the U.S. will be $3,500. That is a huge, huge cost. Other analysts I've talked to estimate that it'll go up by 20 to 25% if we make iPhones here in the U.S. Now, of course, President Trump has said that he wants to bring manufacturing back to America. That is a huge undertaking. Apple is not going to just pack up its bags and bring the facilities back here overnight. And if we take a look at the volatility happening in the stock market, as you mentioned, a lot of business leaders this week have already said that they're not going to do anything. They cannot focus on day-to-day operations when there's huge swings in the Dow. So while President Trump says that he wants to bring manufacturing back here, a made-in-America iPhone likely won't happen anytime soon.
And $3,500 for a phone, I cannot imagine anyone who is going to do that. So on that note, are you seeing people panic buying iPhones now before prices possibly go up?
Yes, people are panic buying. Chances are if you go into an Apple store, it kind of looks and feels like the holidays, right? Apple has front-loaded inventory, so they're fine for now. But as we move closer to the summertime, and if Apple isn't given an exclusion, which is an option, and if the tariffs stay as is, then yes, the prices will go up.
Oh my goodness. All right, Yasmin, thank you so much for making that make sense for all of us here. It really puts it all into perspective. We appreciate your time. Yikes. A high-stakes court hearing in the case of the Menendez brothers. We're live in Los Angeles next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Today, a judge could decide whether to proceed with the resentencing of Eric and Lyle Menendez. The brothers were convicted of killing their parents 30 years ago. Right now, the court is in a break, but CBS News correspondent Carter Evans has been in the courtroom now for a bit. Carter, what is the latest?
Well, you know, I think people thought that this hearing was going to go fairly quickly, and that is not the case right now. Prosecutors are still talking, and it basically seems like they're laying out the case as they would if this were the resentencing hearing. But this is not the resentencing hearing. What this hearing is for is we basically crossed over a couple of district attorneys here. We had an outgoing district attorney that requested this resentencing hearing, and the incoming district attorney is opposing it right now. So they're arguing why they should not have a resentencing hearing. And basically what they're saying is that the brothers haven't accepted full responsibility for their crimes. The defense says that's nonsense. They've spent decades, making good for their crimes. They've got degrees in prison. They've had good behavior in prison. They've done good things with their lives since then, and that they have apologized. They have shown remorse. But the prosecutor says, not completely. And here's why. One of the main arguments in the court case for the defense was that basically the brothers say they shot their parents because they thought they were going to be killed by their parents on that night. Now, the jurors didn't believe that. The appellate courts didn't buy it. The Supreme Court didn't buy it. And basically what prosecutors are pointing out is that as late as last year in that Netflix documentary, the brothers were still talking about that as their defense. And so basically what prosecutors are saying is because of that, they haven't fully accepted this, and there should not be a resentencing hearing. Mark Garagos, the attorney for the brothers, is basically saying this is a bunch of grandstanding today. He called it a dog and pony show. And because this is taking so long now, it's possible we won't get a decision from the judge at all today.
Oh, wow. Okay, then. Carter Evans in Los Angeles, thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate that update. California Governor Gavin Newsom sent a letter to the Department of Homeland Security requesting the return of a Venezuelan man deported to a prison in El Salvador. Andre Hernandez Romero was featured on 60 Minutes earlier this week. His attorney says he does not have a criminal record in the United States or in Venezuela. She says Hernandez Romero is gay and applied for asylum in the United States due to persecution for his sexuality and political views back in Venezuela. She worries.
It's horrifying to see someone who we've met and know as a sweet, funny artist in the most horrible conditions I could imagine.
You fear for Andre's safety in there?
Absolutely. We have grave concerns about whether he can survive.
Governor Newsom says he supports efforts to secure the border, but denounces deportations without due process. He says Hernandez Romero should be returned to the United States so that an immigration judge can evaluate the merits of his case. The crackdown on immigration has ignited misinformation campaigns across social media. Many legal residents are concerned about what will happen to them when they travel internationally. Our CBS News Confirmed team went through the online content so that you don't have to. Melissa Martini has more on what you need to know.
In the past several weeks, videos have gone viral on social media describing scary encounters at U.S. airports, with some travelers claiming they were harassed or detained at U.S. Customs. Some have even claimed they were coerced into giving up their green card. But not all of what's being shared is true. The fear and uncertainty is causing misinformation to flourish, especially among those who are in the process of naturalizing or obtaining other status. So what are the facts? Legal permanent residents, also known as green card holders, have different rights than U.S. citizens, but typically they cannot have that status revoked without a hearing. Visa holders similarly do have due process rights, but their visa status might be revoked without a hearing because a visa is given at the discretion of the government. Now, people online have also been advising each other to remove Face ID and delete social media apps before traveling. We spoke to an immigration lawyer to get her advice on what the right thing is to do.
The First Amendment protects everyone who is within the United States. It's more complicated at ports of entry, at airports, where your electronic devices may be searched by Customs and Border Protection officers, especially if you are a non-citizen. This is why it may be important for non-citizens to consider what is on their electronic devices, their laptops, their phones, before entering the United States. And folks should consider what they're posting on social media and whether or not it may pose problems when they're trying to re-enter the country.
So as you heard Mukherjee say, consider what you post online, what you have on your phone, and if you are really nervous about re-entering the US, call an immigration lawyer or an organization focused on immigrant rights. Another good resource are these red cards from the Immigrant Legal Resource Center. You can find them on their website, ilrc.org. They outline certain constitutional rights in nearly 20 languages, including English, and can be a helpful resource for you to have with you for whatever circumstance you may encounter. Melissa Matani with CBS News confirmed.
CBS Mornings anchor Gayle King going to space. How she's getting ready for the launch. That's next. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Cameras here captured the moments when a U.S.-Russian dual citizen who was held in a Russian prison for more than a year reunited with loved ones. She was greeted by her fiancé, friends, and White House officials when her plane landed at Joint Base Andrews. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata has the details.
Back on U.S. soil, Ksenia Carolina could hardly contain her excitement as she stepped off a government plane and into the arms of her fiancé. Carolina was detained last February while visiting family in Russia. She was arrested for donating $51.80 to a U.S.-based charity that supports Ukraine. That was treason, said Russia when they sentenced her to 12 years. Her freedom came Wednesday through a prisoner swap on a tarmac in Abu Dhabi. The U.S. freed a dual Russian-German citizen arrested on smuggling charges. President Trump revealed UFC CEO Dana White, who's also a friend of Carolina's fiancé, played a big role in lobbying for her case.
The ballerina who was released, that was at the request of a very good friend of all of ours. We spoke to President Putin about it, and they made a deal.
This was the second prisoners swap between the current Trump administration and Russia. In February, American school teacher Mark Fogel was released. Carolina will now undergo medical treatment in San Antonio as she adjusts to life back home. Charlie D'Agata, CBS News, Washington.
Thanks, Charlie. News we're following around the world. Palestinians, they are leaving eastern Gaza following Israeli evacuation orders. This comes as a renewed offensive by Israel led to bombing of several districts. The Israeli military says it is targeting terror infrastructure. The death toll after a roof collapsed at a nightclub in the Dominican Republic is now 221. Investigators are still working to find out what caused the roof collapse at the Jet Set nightclub. A number of prominent figures were in attendance, including politicians and athletes. Prince Harry made a surprise trip to Ukraine, meeting with victims of the war with Russia as part of his work with wounded veterans. He visited the Superhuman Center, a clinic that provides care and rehabilitation for the injured. He met with surgeons and spent time with both soldiers and civilians injured in the conflict. CBS Mornings anchor Gayle King is going into space in just 3 days. She boards the Blue Origin rocket alongside an all-female crew. Other members on that flight include Katy Perry, Lauren Sanchez, Aisha Bowe, Amanda Wynn, and Carrie-Anne Flynn. Gayle sat down with our very own Vlad Dutier to talk more about Monday's launch.
I'm just thinking about that moment when you achieve weightlessness.
I'm actually really looking forward to that.
You are?
Yes, I'm really looking forward to that.
Tell me why.
I'm looking forward to just floating in space and just seeing what that feels like and what that looks like. That's the thing I'm most looking forward to. That and looking out the window. But I found myself wondering, how do you get back into your seat? After you get out of the seat and you're floating around, how do you get back down to your seat? Is it like swimming back down? I'll learn that in training.
Yeah.
And try to float with some dignity.
This is all the more impressive because you're 70 years old.
Yes, yes.
You know when you're little and you see
Yes.
somebody who's 40.
They seem old.
They seem old.
I have
You
no
didn't-
hang-ups
What did you
about
think
my
you would be
age.
doing when you were 70?
Listen, in no world would I have thought this was possible 6 months ago that I'd be going to space at 70. It just shows you that it's true, a guy can dream a bigger dream for you than you can dream for yourselves. It also tells you what's possible at this age. I look at some of these young people and say, keep up. So I don't have hang-ups about 70 and what that means and what that represents. I just think, everybody can define it for themselves.
What are you hoping that others get out of this, seeing you, watching you, living this moment with you? What do you hope they get out of it?
I hope that they'll feel proud of me, that they'll be happy for me, to know that I pulled this off, that it will be an inspiration to somebody at some point in their lives. That's what I hope.
Gosh, I love that. You can watch Gail's trip to space on Blue Origin Monday in a special hour of CBS Mornings, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. All right, today is National Pet Day, and what better way to celebrate than to show off some of our pets? Take a look. This is Chad Simpson, our AR/VR studio ops manager, and his dog, Cheddar Bay, named after those yummy Red Lobster biscuits. And this is producer Lorena Franco's dog, Frida. She celebrated her 4th birthday recently and loves to get out all her energy by playing ball. And this is Nix and Athena. Associate producer Bria Mitchell says they are wayward cats and partners in crime. Producer Olivia Wilson has a full house with Luna and Sky. Olivia says they're both Southern girls who love the ocean. And there's Little and Venus, both outdoor cats that love a good belly scratch. Director Scott Chambers' cat, Caesar, is 16 years old and loves to cuddle and also loves the sunny California days. This is Sir Lance. Producer Imani Jones says they call him the top dog security because even though he's little, his bark is mighty and he takes his job of securing his house very seriously. Adorable. And this is Christina Capatides with our CBS News digital media team and her dog, Mooch. Adorable. And hey, this is Scoop. Okay, so she's a service dog in training with Canine Companions. Our executive producer, Jennifer Williams, is training Scoop, you see here, so that someday she might help someone with a disability. So she's technically not a pet. She actually does real work. But we celebrate her every day, right, Scoop? She's one of several service dogs in training at CBS stations around our country. Okay, so it is time. Hey, Scoop. It's time to bring up our TikTok tube because CBS Texas also has a canine companion service dog in training. His name is Lone Star. You okay, Scoop? And as you'll see, he is much further along in his training than Scoop is. Let's watch this.
Number 1. Yes, good boy. Yes, good boy. Hey guys, thumbs right here. Push. Yes, good. There you go. Good boy. I just had to see it first. So next, Lone Star is going to be continuing to generalize his retrieve to different objects, different textures, and then he's going to be very excited to start on tug. That's another behavior that he will get started on pretty soon. We will try to generalize our push on this red button. He's never seen this, but this is kind of what generalizing level he is at now. Lone Star, hi buddy, you ready? Lone Star, push. Yes, good. So I'm just getting excited that he.
All right, you see that, Scoop? That is definitely going to be you one day, right? She's a good girl. America Decides with Major Garrett is next. Thank you so much for joining us on CBS News 24/7 today. Have a great Friday, everyone. Enjoy the weekend. Right, Scoop? Bye.